there are several stories that allow us to perhaps ride the energies that are around on a day like today, called Halloween, and we can make our own connotations of that. But it gives an opportunity for us to dive deep and ask several questions using those energies that are abounding. Call them occult, if you will. First is a story already told, a version of which, and it's about that very worldly man who knew the ways of the world very well. But for many years he'd been drawn to visit a certain monastery whose head was an abbess of very great wisdom and knowledge and compassion. And he'd followed her advice for all of that time. But one day he came to visit her in rather a state of agitation. And when he was seated before her, she said to him, "I can see that you have now traversed all the avenues that have been made available to you, those of the world and those of the pathway inward, as dictated by the disciplines you've undertaken at my request. So there is no recourse left for you but to enter the red door." Now this red door made everyone quake, because there was not known what it was that lay beyond that door. Even those who had lived in the monastery for many years, although knowing that it was only the abbess who had the key to this door, no one who had been there, and very few had, who would tell what it was that they experienced. So this man, of course, having heard those rumors, quaked a little at the thought, but at the same time was quite excited as to what it was that there may be that lay beyond that door. So the abbess led him down the passageways of the monastery until they came to that red door. Taking a key out of her robe, she put it in the lock of the door and opened the door. And she literally shoved the man into the doorway, closing the door behind him and turning the key. So he knew that there was no going back. But as his eyes grew accustomed to the darkness of that room, he realized that he was standing on a ledge. As his eyes again became accustomed, he could see in the distance, on the other side of the room, another door. But between the ledge on which he was standing and the doorway in his vision across the room was a great expanse like an abyss. He stood trembling because it seemed that he could hear sounds coming from the depths of that great chasm that seemed to be in front of him. He could hear the roaring sounds and even sounds of flames, rocks. His sensibilities were bombarded by what his mind imagined was rising out of that great expanse. And of course, his reactions came upon him. He began to tremble and shake in fear. How was he to traverse this space? How was he to get across this expanse and arrive at the doorway on the other side of this room? And of course, his imagination ran riot, and it seemed that even his past lives and all that had happened in his life rushed before his eyes, thinking that this was the end. So the fear and trembling was so great, he sweated and wept as the emotions washed over him. But he did know that he had to walk across that expanse and arrive at that door. What was he to do? But suddenly he realized very clearly that he could not go back, and the only way to reach that door was forward. So, in fear and trembling, he stepped out, and to his great surprise found that as he did so, a path opened up for him which led right across that expanse to the doorway beyond. It seemed that in just a trice he was able to traverse that expanse and find himself on the other side of that room, to face the doorway that lay there. The doorway. And the second story is about a young man who at a very early age lost his parents in a plague that came through that place. He was left with nothing but a small piece of bare ground, which even when he dug and tried to cultivate, did not seem to bear anything of value, not even to make a subsistence living for him. He was an orphan, a waif. He wandered in town and people called him a scarecrow, and we'll call him Scarecrow. And very often he'd go out into the forest and wander about the forest, not even knowing what he was looking for. But one day, in desperation, he took his pickaxe and his shovel, and he put them on his shoulder and went into the forest. He thought that he might be able, even though he hadn't been able before, to find somewhere where he could plant a few seeds, perhaps. But he knew that in the forest that had been familiar to him, there was no such place, so he was drawn to move deeper and deeper into that wilderness. But after some while, seeming to be lost and wandering about, he took rest under a very great tree. But suddenly, all of a sudden, he felt such a great thirst and a great hunger. His belly rumbled with longing. But there was nothing, not a blade of grass that was edible, no berries to be found, or fruit on the trees. So a great sense of hopelessness. He had a grumbling stomach, a thirst such that he'd never known before. But there was nothing here that could assuage it. Not a pond, not even dew on the ground, when suddenly there appeared an old woman. Now in courtesy, our man, who we called Scarecrow, said, Mother, what are you doing in this wilderness? But instead of answering his question, she merely said, Give me your pickaxe and your spade, and take off all of your clothing. So he could not but obey what she said, and handed her his pickaxe and spade, and began to take off his tattered shirt and unwind his dhoti that he had round his waist. And she said, Turn around. And as he turned, he found himself in another place, a place he had never been before. It was like a palace. There were people there who greeted him, welcomed him. And it seemed that the custodian of that place came to him and said, You are the king of this place. Let me show you your palace, your realm, your kingdom. And this custodian proceeded to show our Scarecrow around this place, this palace, from room to room to room, until finally they came to a door. The custodian said, All of this palace is yours, but you cannot pass through this door. It is sacred. Now, Scarecrow very quickly fell into the role of being the king of that realm. He was very fair with the people who were around him, and it seemed that his palace, his realm, prospered. But there was something that gnawed at him. That door. What was it that was behind that door? So even though all was well in his kingdom, he longed to know, what was it? Why was he not allowed there? Why was it called a sacred door? But a festival was coming, a day when all the people of that place gathered around to celebrate. And so they did. But after the celebrations and the feastings, when everyone went to rest, Scarecrow could not rest. It was time. Why could he not, at the height of these festivities, the height of these celebrations, and why couldn't he, after all he was king, enter that doorway? So he determined that he would. So he went down to that place where the door who was situated. The door. So the question that arises first of all from these stories, what for us is the symbol of a door? In the world of symbolism that resides in our psyche, like all symbols, what is the symbol of a door? And if we can translate this symbol, it becomes a key that opens that door for us. What is the symbol of a door for you? The symbol of a door. Speak up. Let's use it as a key.
It's a new beginning.
Okay, beginning. And what do beginnings connote for us? Beginnings.
Something new, something different that we haven't done before, a new beginning.
Absolutely.
Into
something else.
Yes.
The end of something, yeah.
The unknown, isn't it? The unknown, something new. So if we use this symbol as a key, and the door opens for us, and we look at it knowing that it's new, it's a new beginning, it's the unknown. What can we bring up that allows us to recognize what is behind that door?
Trust.
Okay? What else?
It's fear of the unknown.
Yes?
It's like involved with death, coming to another life. And we can't comprehend know what it is.
What is this place where the mind can no longer bring up the fears that were there? The sounds of the fire coming out of the abyss, or the screams and the wails of the demons that might be down there. And we've already traversed that, as the first story tells us, facing those fears, facing those ghouls and demons and things of the unconscious and the subconscious and all of that.
So then, I'm sorry.
Yes.
So then we have the confidence to just open the door and go through it.
Right on. Right on.
The faith
Yes?
to know it's okay to open the door and go
Yes.
through.
To the unknown. To step out into nothing for the unknown. Could it be so
Exciting?
exciting? Exciting, yes. Anticipation. It releases something in us. A force, doesn't it? A force. When all of that the mind could conjure has been faced and is no more. So if we put these stories together, they tell our story, allowing us to recognize, yes, we did enter that, we forced through that red door. We did face the abyss with all the imaginings that were there and traversed that pathway over to the doorway into what we can say with a mind cleared of all possibilities that it can seduce us into
Fears.
fear, to anticipate the unknown with excitement and bringing this force together that allows. Isn't it so?
Yeah.
Can't we feel it? You betcha.
It's like another awakening. Each door that closes, another awakening happens within.
Right. Thank you.